You can make £500,000 quicker than you can make £100,000. Why? Because the first £100,000 is the hardest. Are you confused? You probably are. Let's get into the maths, then we're gonna go back to why that first 100K is the hardest. I personally built my own investment portfolio to £150,000, so I know exactly how hard that first 100K is, but let's get into the maths. Who doesn't love a good compound interest calculation? Do you also do them in your bed as you're trying to fall asleep? Maybe not, but I do. And in this example, we're gonna be assuming you're investing £500 per month and earning 7% per year. We'll come back to those assumptions afterwards, but just roll with them for now. Using those assumptions, it would take you 11 years and 3 months to get to the fabled £100,000. Fabled? Is that a word? I played Fable 3. That was one of my very first Xbox 360 games. That is an absolute throwback. But once again, stick with me. We're gonna go through the maths. Third time lucky. That is a long time, over a decade in this example, to get to £100,000. But to then get to £200,000, assuming you're still contributing £500 per month and you're earning an average of 7% per year, to then get to 200K will take you an extra 6 years and 3 months. So roughly, it's taken you half the time to then double your pot. You can probably see where I'm going with this. To get to £300,000 would take you an extra 4 years and 5 months of investing. £400,000 would take an extra 3 years and 5 months. And £500,000 would take you 28 years and 1 month in total, which is an extra 2 years and 7 months from £400,000 invested. Now, let's cut the 100K increments out and go straight to £1 million, and it would take you in total 37 years and 2 months. First of all, hopefully this shows a realistic journey of how you can actually build your portfolio to become a millionaire and one day live off of your investments. But the key point with this slide here is to get from £500,000 to £1 million has taken 9 years and 1 month. If you recall at the start, to get to £100,000 took over 11 years. But then to get from £500,000 to £1 million took just over 9 years. This really, number one, is the power of compound interest, and number two, why the first £100,000 is the hardest. But before we delve into that in a bit more detail, let's quickly chat about the assumptions. Number one, £500 per month. You might be able to invest more than that or less than that. Everyone's situation is different, and you might be able to get to £100,000 quicker. For me personally, I was able to build up my own investment portfolio to £100,000 in 6.5 years, and that was mainly through my stocks and shares ISA and my workplace pension. Secondly, the 7% per year return is an after inflation average over the long term of what history tells us we can get from the stock market. So that's the key. These numbers are quoted after inflation. If I had used 10% when doing these compounding projections, the numbers would be much, much bigger. So this is all after inflation. Before people in the comments are like, oh, but £1 million is gonna be worth nothing in 37 years. I mean, it's still a million. Like, I'd rather have £1 million sitting there than nothing. So stop waiting, start investing. The point is, these are assumptions, and of course you can tweak them for your own specific set of circumstances. But this ultimately why the first £100,000 is the hardest.
That's what she said.
Charlie Munger, of course, said it best in this quote. Now, firstly, he did say this in the late 90s. So £100,000 back then is now worth about £220,000. However, that's beside the point. Getting to 6 figures, £100,000, is a massive milestone, and it is difficult. Why is it difficult? Because it's gonna take mainly your own contributions to get there. If we look at that compound interest calculation for the first 11 years and 3 months, 2/3 of it is your own contributions. In that first 11 years, you've had to contribute £67,500. And you can see the total interest you've earned is only, I say only, but it's only £33,000. However, when you then zoom out, can you hear that dog? If my camera's picking it up, the mic's good. It's a new mic as well, or newish. However, if we flip and look at the other extreme, at the £1 million investment pot, you will see it's almost completely opposite. The total deposit and contributions you've made are £223,000, whereas most of your pot has been generated from compound interest of £781,000. And this is ultimately why the first 100K is the hardest, and you'll hear this a lot on social media and in books and from myself right now in this video. It's gonna take your hard work and consistency of saving to invest to get to that point. Now you might get an employer matched workplace contribution. So you might be able to get some free money to get you there quicker. You might be using a stocks and shares lifetime ISA to get free money from the government and get you there quicker. But it's still gonna largely take your own contributions to get to that point. It was the exact same for me. And depending on how much you can invest will ultimately determine how quickly you get to that £100,000 mark. But then once you get to that point, you have a great financial base, and then compound interest really does start working wonders. Using a recent example of myself, 2024 was a great year from the stock market, and I made 5 figures of gains because I already had a 6-figure portfolio. Now, if I think back to say 5 or 6 years ago, where I had £10,000 invested, I might have made £2,000 in the stock market last year. That's great, but it's of course not life-changing. Last year, I had £100,000 invested and I made £20,000 in gains. That is life-changing because it's getting up to the point of being an average UK salary. And I think that is the difficult thing with investing at the start, particularly in the early years, in the first 5-10 years. A lot of investing is going to be your own contributions. And even if there are good returns in the markets or in the stocks you're invested into, the absolute pound amounts might not be massive if your pot is smaller. However, once you get to that bigger pot of 6-figure plus and you have a good year, all of a sudden your wealth can just blow up massively. Of course, it can still drop if there's a crash, but that really is the benefit of getting to a 6-figure pot and ultimately why the first 100K is the hardest. So the early years of saving to invest is tough, but you need to do it. And I think don't get disheartened and don't give up if it's taken you a while. Everyone's journey is different, but once you can get to that high 5-figure and small 6-figure pot, the needle will really start moving with building your own wealth, and that will keep you motivated to stick with it for the long term. Of course, the earlier you start, the better, because the more compound interest you can earn, the more time in the market you have, and the more you can start with, the better. If you can get to £100,000 within a year because you're on a massive salary or inherited money, then this might not be an issue for you. For other people, it might take a decade like this. It might take 2 decades, but that's completely fine. Everyone's journey will, of course, be different. But that is ultimately why the first £100,000 is the hardest. I hope going through this video showing the maths and compound interest calculations was helpful. If you have any thoughts at all, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Make sure you sign up to my email newsletter. I'll leave the link in the description, sending out useful tips every single week when it comes to investing and personal finance. And of course, the main message of this video is stick with investing. It will be worth it over the long term. Have a good day. I'll see you in the next video.